All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott with the 309 Punk Project, and we are doing our annual fundraiser. This is really our first big annual fundraiser. We haven't done one like this in quite some time. So we're going to be doing a lot of different things. One of the things we're doing with these fundraisers is trying to bring a lot more programming. And we want to bring in some programming that's diverse and is something different than probably a lot of other folks are doing right now. So therefore, we decided to tap on our friends and ask them if they would like to join us for some of these discussions. And we are so delighted to have Miriam and Niall McGuirk join us. Niall and Miriam live in Dublin, Ireland. We were lucky enough to stay with them back in 2006. We stayed with them in 2006. My wife and my daughter and I stayed over at their house, and they were so pleasant, so nice, accommodating, picked us up and took us around places, and even brought Lauren her passport when she left it at the house. I don't know if you remember that or not, but you had to run over there. We're sitting there stranded in the airport. Not knowing what to do and how to go anywhere, but we're eternally grateful for your hospitality back then, and remain friends over the years. So, would you two like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Niall.
Miriam.
I'm from Dublin, and we're part of the Hope Collective, which started off as Hope Promotions and then expanded to a collective putting on gigs and doing different things, promoting kind of DIY and independent punk scene worldwide, I suppose.
Miriam?
Yeah, I came in after a Hope Collective had started, and I just joined in with helping out, putting on gigs and putting up posters and all the background work that needed to be done. And I was kind of the face of it, and then I would obviously he did background work too, but yeah, so I just tagged along and loved every minute of it.
And we ended up getting married.
Yeah.
Hence the last name.
Which could be part of the story as well, but yeah, we got married.
Yeah.
So it works out. Punks bring people together. Sometimes. So what year did the Hope Collective start?
Well, I'll take this one. Yeah, so the Hope Collective officially started, I suppose, around 1990, but the first gig that I put on was 1984. The first kind of gig of a touring band was, I think, 1986, when a band called the Membranes from England played in Dublin. And the reason why they played in Dublin was a friend of mine liked them. He was doing a fanzine, and he wrote to the Membranes and said, "Why have you never come to Dublin?" And they wrote back, because that's what we did back then. You know, you sent letters, and they sent a letter back and says, "Nobody has asked us." So he sent a letter back to the Membranes and says, "Well, I'm asking you." And then they sent a letter back and says, "Oh, great." So they came over. The 1986, they came over, and then the following year, they wanted to come back again. And at that stage, Hugo, who did the letter writing the first time around, hadn't really got an interest in putting them on again. He was doing whatever he was doing. So I said, yeah, I'd do it. And when they went back to England, they started telling their friends, "You should come over to Ireland and play, and you'll have a good time, or whatever, you have a chance to play." And so John Robb was the person from the Membranes, and he gave my phone number to people in different bands. And so the next band that came over were Anrevan from Wales. And then the next band was Fugazi from Washington, D.C. And so when Fugazi played, that's when Hope Collective kind of started, because I asked, there was a friend of mine designing the poster, and I asked, would he put a name on the poster, because if we're going to put on gigs, we might as well have a name. And that's when Hope, the name, started on that Fugazi poster. And actually, he didn't put it on the poster, but he was doing it for free, so I couldn't give out to him or complain about it. But that's where that idea, and then after, so that was in 1980, December 89, and so 1990, I think it was a band called DI from California, were due to play, and that would have been the first gig that Hope would have been on, but then DI cancelled. So the first gig was the Vandals. First Hope, the name with Hope on it was the Vandals in 1990.
Okay. You know, the Vandals were over here recently, or who was it? Or one of the members of the Vandals came by to check out the Punxsutawney exhibit. So
oh, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have a little story about the Vandals.
Oh yeah.
You can edit this out. You can edit this out if you want, but
I don't edit anything. So.
Okay. Well. So I don't know. Dublin in 1990. It's a lot different to Dublin in 2020, but I kind of say that Dublin back then was in black and white, was, you know, monochrome, and now it's in color, you know. So back then it was like there wasn't much money, and there wasn't, you know, people from Dublin never left the country unless they were emigrating. You know, there was no, it wasn't like a lot of travel back and forward, and we weren't necessarily worldly in our view. We were starting to head that way. And 1990, I wouldn't have had a car. So the Vandals were coming into Dublin, and they were getting the ferry in a place called Dunleary, and they were traveling over as foot passengers for the gig because it was cheaper for them to do that. So I went out to meet them in Dunleary, and Dunleary, as they thought it was called because of the way it's spelled. And they got off the ferry, and I went, "Oh yeah, you must be the Vandals. You look like you're in a band. You're carrying the guitar. Come on with me." And they went, "Okay." And we went to the bus stop to get the bus into town. So they hopped on public transport when they arrived. And again, and I look back and, you know, it's a good story, but it kind of shows the innocence, or yeah, maybe the innocence of where we were coming from. Because I was going, "Well, sure, I got the bus out. Why wouldn't they get the bus back?" But when you think about it, they were a band, they were tired, they were playing a gig that night. They deserved to get a lift in a car, at least.
But I do think there was a lot of incidences that would have happened like that over the years, where you just treat people like, you know, they're just normal people, and we don't have cars, so.
So I'm not sure if the Vandals remember that, but like I didn't mean any disrespect in any way. But, you know,
I don't think it's
they hopped on the bus.
They had no choice but to get the bus.
Did Fugazi had to ride the bus?
Well, Fugazi had their own transport.
They had
Okay, yeah,
they would have had to get the bus anyway. If they didn't have a van, they would have had to get the bus.
Well, we didn't.
Flew into a helicopter.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know. No, go on. Yeah, I was just going to say there's stories for every band. So name a band, we can give you a story, but go on anyway.
No, don't.
Well, if you don't know this, y'all had written a book together, I believe it's together, called well, in this country it's called Please Feed Me, but it was released under a different name over in Ireland. So what was it?
Yeah. We called it Document, A Story of Hope. So we self-released it in Dublin, and Soft Skull in the States asked to repress it. They contacted me and said, "Oh, can we, you know, publish this in the States?" And I went, "No." And then same kind of thing, or back and forward, you know. It's like, you know, why would you want to do that? You know, we have it out here, it's fine. Because it's just easier when you're in control of everything, you know. So anyway, the owner, or the head person at Soft Skull at the time, was from Limerick. So because of that, and which is a town in Ireland, a county in Ireland, and so because of that, we messaged back and forward, and eventually it came out. But you know, it's a completely different name because they called it Please Feed Me. It's a different cover. It's done by them, and the content's still the same. But you know, it's just
it didn't feel like our book as much. But
no.
Yeah.
But it's in the States. And then Soft Skull went bust. They went bust somehow. So it never got republished, or there was no repress of it. You know, so it's hard. It's out of print now.
No, we have to come to my house then to be able to get a copy. If anybody wants to try some of the recipes, I love all the recipes in there. Though we'll just pick some at random sometimes. They're all vegan recipes, we'll just pick some at random and just try one every once in a while. Some are better than others, but it just shows what it's
definitely.
Like.
I think there's a recipe in there for pot noodle, which is just I don't know whether it's the same for you, but it's literally just a plastic pot full of dried noodles that you add boiling water to.
Ramen noodles.
Yeah, that wasn't very, but not very imaginative.
I think Frankie Stubbs' from Leatherface, I think his recipe was beans on toast or something.
Oh, I remember that too.
Yeah.
I think we were looking through there trying to find a good recipe to make, and then I said, "Oh, I haven't had this since I was over there," because I never had that before until I went overseas.
Okay, all right, yeah. It's a staple everyday part of our diet now.
Oh yeah.
Well, not anymore.
Not really.
Not
No, I
anymore.
know it's we've evolved.
Moved up. Now we eat
Yeah.
ramen noodles.
Yeah.
So can you both tell me the first show you went to, the first gig that you went to?
Well,
I can't.
while Miriam was thinking about the first gig I went to that I remember was a band called Paranoid Visions from Dublin.
Mhm.
They were playing in a place called the Ivy Rooms, and the reason why I remember it is it was my cousin's wedding day, Colette, and so when we heard so my brother, I have 3 older brothers, and 2 of them were into punk, and that's how I kind of got interested. But one of them wanted to go to this Paranoid Visions gig, and we heard it was the same day as Colette's wedding. We're like, oh no, what are we going to do? So we went to the wedding, and then so over here you have the wedding in the afternoon, and then there's a reception in a hotel afterwards. So after her wedding, they went back to a hotel in a place called Malahide. Myself and Gary snuck out of the wedding, got a bus into town to see Paranoid Visions playing the Ivy Rooms. And I don't think I've ever been as terrified in my whole life. First of leaving the wedding and getting caught. Second of like just being at a gig, and it was just so intense.
Were you in a suit?
No, I didn't have to wear a suit at the wedding.
In your
Would have stood
tuxedo.
Yeah. But I remember even going, again, Dublin was just a strange place. On our way into the Ivy Rooms, we were waiting at the bus stop and cycling around Malahide. Now, Malahide is a quite well-to-do area. I remember as well as anything, there was a fellow with a baseball bat on a bike, on a cycle, push bike, and just going up and down with a baseball, up and down the main street of Malahide, wielding this baseball bat. And then kind of, no, he didn't hit anybody, but he looked like you wouldn't want to go near him, And he kept cycling up and down while we were waiting on the bus, And I was going, I hope he doesn't come here. And that kind of was like what, in a way, that kind of sums it all up for those gigs and all, because it was, always a chance of trouble, even though there may not have been trouble. So that was my first gig, Paranoid Visions from Dublin. And I hope I've gone on long enough to let you remember.
Well, I can't really remember my first gig because I think it was a band maybe called Cypress Mine. We were already talking about those earlier. They were a band from Dublin, but I was quite young when I met Niall. Well, we were both a couple of years between us, but I was only 17, 18. So I hadn't really gone to a huge amount of gigs prior to that. So my first gig probably would have been, what was the early Hope gigs? Whatever the first.
Not Our World, maybe, or House of Iron or something.
Not Our World, I suppose it was Niall's band. Actually, I was thinking big gigs. But yeah, Niall's band probably would have been one of the earlier gigs that I was at as well, yeah.
And if you mean big gigs, if you mean big gig, The Clash was my first one, as part of their last, what would you call it, their last reincarnation. What people looking back say it was probably the worst one, because it was only just Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon.
But who can say they saw the Clash?
But for me, it was just amazing. It was the Clash. They were playing the Clash songs. It was just incredible. Probably the worst Clash lineup, but it didn't matter.
No, it wouldn't matter.
Still so much better.
No, you could say you were there.
Yeah.
So going back to the, I guess the book, well, I'm thinking of the Please Feed Me book, but then also, the Please Feed Me has a lot of stories and, as they're connected to the Hope Collective. So with some of the stories that came out of the Hope Collective, what are some of your favorite ones from the early shows, or what were the early shows like? Maybe that's a better way to ask that question. What were the early shows like?
I don't want to be the one doing all the talking. So to me, the idea behind the book, sort of that Please Feed Me, basically there was a story about every show and then a vegan recipe for each show, and we asked each band to do a recipe. And to me, that was just to kind of document all these gigs that happened. And I think it's important, and it's great that we're doing this, or it's great that what you're doing as well over there is that you're documenting and you're keeping something alive that has happened. So for future generations or for future people to know about. Some may be interested, some may not, but at least it's there for someone to see. So that was the idea behind the book, and that's why it was important for us to publish it. But some like those early gigs, you know, you look back and you think, oh, they were great days, you know. But like, you play in gig, like I say, we tried to put on DI, they got cancelled. We got another band over from Wales to play instead on the night, a band called the Flaps from Wales. And they turned up and somebody broke the toilet in the venue, so the gig couldn't go ahead. And so back then, like, you know, there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. There was a lot of maybe stupidity is too strong a word, but like, there was a lot of trouble, you know, mindless and senseless trouble. There was fire extinguishers being let off at gigs. And then
it just made it more difficult then to book another gig the following week, or, you know, because you just get a bad name in the venue. So that would have, like, my memory of the early stages where just there was so many gigs. There would have been like a lot kind of bands that were, you know, you wouldn't know, you wouldn't have ever heard of, and they would turn up, and there'd be some gigs would have so few people there, like a handful of people, and you wouldn't cover expenses, and could be quite stressful because obviously nobody got paid, but the band would need expenses. But it was really good. Like, most of the time it was good fun, and we met so many people and made great friends. But there was a lot of background work, and there were just so many gigs. But so like, and like that at the time, a lot of the gigs were in small Dublin pubs, so they wouldn't have been in, like, they weren't necessarily big venues, but even a small Dublin pub would be half empty sometimes.
So sometimes, but then you'd have an American band like Fugazi would play, or No Means No would play. There'd be big crowds at that, and the thinking was we put Hope on the poster so that people who go to a Fugazi or No Means No would then go to the Keatons or Dawson from the UK, or maybe even Jawbreaker, that may not have been that big, or Green Day, who may not have been that big when they played. And that was kind of the hope or the aspiration, that it wouldn't really matter who was playing, that, you know, we're putting on a gig, we're all together, we're trying to create a little community of people. We try and have a diverse lineup. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but it was great fun trying to do it.
Well, outside of the shows, did you have meetings where you talked about what you're doing beforehand, group get-togethers, collective stuff?
Every week, I think like every Tuesday night we'd meet up in one of our friends' flats, and there'd be a group of us would get together, and we'd just sit around on the floor and make plans for whatever was upcoming. Niall would be the man with the notebook and the contacts for whatever gig was coming up next. And then we'd all kind of spread out the jobs between, you know, whether you were going to do posters or, you know, my job a lot of the time was standing at the door taking in money with my friend. And just we'd plan where the bands would stay, who was going to feed them, what we cook for them, and we just sat around drinking tea, eating biscuits, and, you know, it was very sociable.
The way it worked was that a band or someone on behalf of a band would write a letter, and then the letters would go to the meeting, and we'd discuss it and see if we wanted or didn't want to put that band on. And we try and have consensus, because we're all from that kind of, you know, consensus driven world, you know. That meant for some long meetings because we were trying to reach a consensus about. I remember there was one band, I suppose I could name them now. They were called the Abs, and they had, and I know the people in the band at this stage, but and hopefully they won't be watching this. But they asked to come over, and we had a meeting and discussed them, and they were probably one of the only bands we said no to, because their inside sleeve in the record had pictures of scantily clad women. And you may not even remember this, but we were like, oh, why would we want to promote a band who do that? And it was a collage of stuff, you know, and I haven't even looked back at their album in a long time, so I don't know now if I'd look upon it differently. But they're really nice people. But we went, no. But the meeting decided, you know, after a good long discussion, that no, we didn't want to promote that kind of stuff. Or if there was a band that was linked to a major record label, you know, we'd have a discussion. I think it might have been when Therapy were about to sign, Therapy from Belfast were about to sign, or it might have been, there was some band that was linked to a major record label, and we were like, well, no, we don't.
It's just a no, flat out no.
Yeah, because they'd have the machinery behind them. You know, it wasn't that we were saying they shouldn't be signing. We never came out and made that statement. It was like, well, you have the record label machinery, then you don't need our small machinery because we've enough to be doing. Anyway.
So was that the bottom line as far as bands? You know, why they could play there, or why you would promote them, or is it really just everybody would look at the records or look at the contracts, or, you know, just get a feel of it?
It was, you know, it was never, we'd be up for putting on anyone. It was never really like you would go through, I would say,
the sound of anyone,
the sound,
not a record.
You know, not obviously once they weren't on major record labels. Beyond that, I mean, it was, yeah, like if they want to come over and they want somebody to put it on, we would do it. We didn't kind of pull apart and look for reasons not to do a gig, I would say. In my memory of it, it was more like yes to everyone unless there was a good reason not to.
But major record label, that was the bottom line, because again, like I say, it was just they have the machinery. Yeah,
like it was the whole reason we were there was because you wanted to put on bands that weren't able to travel or being given those opportunities. So why would we bother doing it for major label bands? And you know, they wouldn't be happy with our setup anyway. You know, they wouldn't, like, they would expect more.
So what we did, well,
not
and at that stage we still hadn't got a car anyway. So, but what we did was, we were, as a collective, we'd meet every week and we would give subs. We would pay £2 a week if we had it. Whoever had it would pay it into a pot so that there was some money there. And so our £2 wasn't going to go to support some major record label that has, you know, thousands and millions of whatever pound at the time. So that it was never that really was a bottom line. Again, like I say, it wasn't us saying to bands, you shouldn't be with a major record label. It was us saying, if you are, you're on that road. Yeah, we're on a different road. We've no interest in being on that road, which is so, you know, and that's where that came from.
So what would you do when there was only 5 people in the room and you were 2 of them?
at a meeting?
No, at the show. I'm curious just for my own.
So awkward.
I'm curious what y'all did.
Yeah. Well, we the band played and pretended it was more. Frank Sidebottom, who was a comedian, a British comedian. I'm not sure if you've come across him, but he had a papier-mâché head. He's a comedian. There's been some films. He's subsequent. He's dead now. But he played in Dublin, and we put him on, and there probably was 5 people there, including us. And he just played as if there was a full house there. And then when we come down, we're really embarrassed, you know, we're going, I'm really sorry. It's like, no, it's fine. That's the way it goes.
But like even the people who played, they were great because they understood if there was nobody there, there was no money. So there wasn't like, there was no complaint. You know, we would cover what we could, and we'd lose on some gigs because you'd have to obviously give them their expenses. But if there was extra, you'd like to give them more. But I don't ever think we ever had anybody kind of give out about that.
Not to our face, but maybe behind our backs.
But you know, it was almost like there was just this mutual understanding of how we were doing it, that you know, that was the deal. You know, we could never guarantee, because that was the thing. That was another kind of a bad word, I think, at the time, is, you know, being given a guarantee of a certain amount of money. So we just couldn't do that. And that was another part of, well, you know, like there were major record labels, there's no guarantee of a certain amount of money. And it was great because, you know, you weren't getting into all of that negotiating and worrying about trying to cover that.
We were fortunate, Scott, because we asked, you know, the Membranes to come, you know, at the starting point there in 1986, and then they asked to come back in 87. And I think we only asked 2 other bands beside them, beside the Membranes, which was Fugazi the first time they travelled, and Chumbawamba, who played with Fugazi, I think the 3rd time Fugazi travelled. Other than that, every band asked us to accommodate them on a trip to Ireland. So we did. So we were lucky in that way, and then we never signed a contract and wouldn't. So you were talking about bottom lines. There was no major labels and no contracts. You deal with trust. If you don't trust us, that's fine. You can trust someone else and sign a contract with someone else.
But I think as the time went by, you know, the people who were getting in touch were coming from other bands that had been here. So they knew they could trust us, I think, because there was not a reputation, but just people kind of knew we exist, and it's not, you know, what we were about. And so it was because there was word of mouth. I mean, I think about it now, pre-social media, I don't know how we did what we did and managed to kind of set up such a huge network that's still there now. Pre-social media, it was all done through letters, phone calls, and just word of mouth, which is really, really amazing when you think about it, because nothing happens now like that. I wouldn't say there's much happens like that now.
No, it's it's a really interesting level of trust that we all have. You know, I was thinking when you were saying that about how we met you, and it was through our friends who were in This Bike is a Pipe Bomb when they played over in Dublin, and they got us in touch. I remember now, they got us in touch with this kid named Willie. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. They got us in touch with Willie, and then Willie said
he was in a band called Bambi.
I'm sorry?
Willie was in a band called Bambi.
Okay.
In Dublin.
I think he was the one who said that that maybe you would be better for us to get in touch with. So then it was from This Bike is a Pipe Bomb to Willie to you. See this, I remember us sending you an email saying, you know, hi, you say, I know you don't know us, but we're friends of these people, and we're bringing our kid. Would you mind if we slept on your floor? Think about that on the personal level. Maybe when you're saying like you're a family, it's one thing, but you know, but also it's hard for me to imagine that in general with people that aren't in our circles, to be able to do something like that. You know, like people at the university do that.
It was kind of unique. It was a unique kind of a scene, though. I think, you know, like, because I suppose when you got in touch with us, we knew you were just the same as us almost before we met, you know, just that there'd be stuff in common, and there was never any hesitancy to say yes. It was always a yes, of course, and we were always happy to have people stay. And once you kind of heard it was through somebody, there was no questions asked.
Well, it's just it's an amazing network, and it's interesting to think about how that happened before social media, but then also interesting to think about how it still continues, but just in, you know, slightly different ways. But
I know, because it makes me wonder, you know, if it was now and social media, you just know so much more about people, and you know, you can delve deeper into backgrounds and maybe be a bit more judgmental, and there was none of those prejudgments made of anyone at the time. But I just think, you know, just our own kids with social media, and, you know, we use it ourselves. It just gives a completely different I suppose insight into how it would be if it was now as opposed to then, because it was just word of mouth, and we, you know, like that, it was always a yes. Yeah. There was never a thought that this person might be crazy and doesn't really have a wife and kid coming with him.
Yeah, they listen to punk. They listen to punk rock, so they must be okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, actually, I can't remember if you know this, but I guess you do, but our daughter had her first birthday over at your house too. So it was.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
I think we made cake or something. Or we had. I remember I made something for you to take away. Even I can't even remember what it was.
Was it a plate?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, but yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we still have it. We still have it.
It was a plate. It was a plate. Yeah.
I have to ask Lord about
Yeah,
that. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Yeah, it is.
It just shows that.
I can't remember
well, just that kindness, within the punk heart. That it doesn't show up on the record cover sometimes, but is always there. I find.
Yeah.
Well, with the Hope Collective. So, first, I wanted to ask you about contracts. You mentioned something about Green Day's contract. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, Green Day had this non-contract contract, and basically it was. I think it was something that they sent on just for fun, maybe just. So it was the Green Day Punk as Fuck non-contract contract, and in it was provide some food. I think it said 3 vegetarian meals, some drinks.
It had 3 vegetarian meals, 2 non-vegetarian, but they'll eat vegetarian.
And then we'll provide hours of endless entertainment. But it wasn't something to sign and send back. It was just they just sent something on. There was a woman, Christy Colcord. She was living in London at the time, herself and this other woman called Mary Jane. They were kind of running the Lookout operation in the UK. They're both American, and it was that Green Day dealt. Everything went through them, so it was them who sent the Green Day contract over. Yeah. But Green Day played on a Sunday afternoon in Dublin in a place called the Attic, upstairs bar in the White Horse Inn. You know what that's like. The Green Day. 40 or 50 people there. Everyone says they were there, but
it was so badly attended. It was crazy. It was really in comparison to now, not even a handful of people were there.
Well, did they live up to their part of the agreement?
They did. I really enjoyed them.
Hours of endless entertainment.
Yeah.
They were the kind of band though that you didn't get close to. A lot of bands you get to know and they want to talk to you. Green Day were, they were just there to play the gig.
I think they had a great night the previous night in Belfast after their gig. I'm not sure what they did, but they certainly had good fun after their Sunday afternoon to us. Who were like, yeah. I think we're giving popcorn at the door to people coming in. It wasn't quite rock and roll, and it wasn't quite, a drink and drug lifestyle or anything like that. It wasn't party central, but it was fun. I'm not saying it wasn't fun. So as soon as the gig ended, they went back up to Belfast. It's probably more fun. It's probably more fun for them up there.
Yeah, maybe. Well, so what is the Hope Collective doing now?
So the last thing, the Hope Collective put on a lot of gigs, but finished doing a lot of that stuff in the early 2000s because our daughter was born, and then just life kind of got in the way for us. And then when it dwindled from ourselves, it kind of dwindled. But then brought out the book, brought out another, and subsequently brought out 2 more books. So under the Hope Collective Publications.
Oh, can I show one?
A gig
this is one. I probably should have had a better screenshot of this.
Yeah.
Screen share it. But this is one.
I probably should have the other one. I should have had the other one up here.
No, you need
It's in the other room.
We can tell about it. So we'll put a link to it. But yeah, this is such a great idea, though. If I could read it, it's supporting Syrian refugees in concert. Favorite gigs of Ireland's music community, and all these really great stories from seemingly great people in here. And I really enjoyed this book, and then also to have it support Syrian refugees at a really important time is incredibly important. You froze. Everybody's frozen right now, so hold on. Oh, okay. All right. So sorry about that mix up. We're sending these over the oceans. So
Yeah,
all right, we're back
yeah,
with
yeah,
Niall and
yeah.
Miriam. All right, so
Yeah.
so we're talking about what I was talking about the book. So what is Hope Collective doing right now?
Yeah. So we did that book called In Concert, and just before Christmas, just released another book called Great Gig Memories. And so the idea behind In Concert was, it's myself, my friend Michael Murphy. We said, oh, wouldn't it be good to try and raise some money for the Irish Red Cross, who are working with finding homes for Syrian refugees. And so we reached out to people we know in Ireland's music community. So basically, most people who were in punk bands in Ireland, and asked them to tell a story about what their favorite gig was.
Mhm.
And that's what the book was. Again, it's just to kind of create those stories and just, have people talking about good times that they had. But the response was really good. We raised €5,000 for Irish Red Cross. So during COVID, when it was kicking off, Michael was actually stranded in the UK. He's from Dublin. And so we were talking again, and we said, well, maybe we'll try and do another book and raise some money for a thing called the NHS Charities Trust. So it's the UK, the NHS in the UK. So we brought out this book just before Christmas called Great Gig Memories.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept as In Concert, except I think we've about 200 people. We've people from the UK, so the adverts from The Cure, and then loads of people who like Soulside and people who played with us in Dublin. And they're telling their story, giving their favorite gig memories. And the idea again was, because there's no gigs at the moment, so let's talk about those good times that we had, so we can look forward to those good times coming back.
It's a great idea, and the stories are incredible. No, I really enjoyed reading this one, and I enjoyed the talk that you did too, that all of you did, just hearing all of your stories about some of the ones that you shared now, but also other people's stories about bands that I've never heard of before. But just hearing how excited everybody was to talk about these stories was, fantastic.
Yeah. So what we've done, we've done a couple of those webinars, Zoom webinars, and our intention is they were recorded and they will end up somewhere at some stage. But Michael has the recording, so it's when we can figure out what to do, what the best way to deal with them. But what we're trying to do is get people who were in bands back in probably, like in 77, 78, 79, when they were starting to play in bands, to tell their stories while we can kind of document it and grab, the history involved. And to show as well from the stories that anyone can play in a band, anyone can put on a gig, anyone can do a fanzine, anyone can do a webinar, a podcast. And that was the great thing about punk, wasn't it? Punk opened up that world to anybody, and we want to just try and, push that, get that across by the stories that are coming out on the webinars.
Well, that's a good segue into the last question. So how do you see what we're doing over here in Pensacola, Florida, connected to what you've been doing over in Dublin, Ireland with the Hope Collective?
Yeah, so the amazing thing about punk rock, it's like you write a letter to us, or did back then, and turn up and yeah, of course, why wouldn't you stay with us? We're all connected through the music and through a wish to some sort of, whether it's a lifestyle or some sort of way of being able to do it yourself, and to archive it and to have it there to document it for other people to see, and for other people maybe to get influence from, and to show, yeah, I don't have to wait around for somebody. If I'm in a band, I don't have to wait for someone to put a gig on. I'll do it myself. Or if I need to find a venue, I don't have to wait for somewhere else to do it. I'll go here and we'll put on gigs in this place. And I think it's important that we all have these little communities, and there's little communities all throughout the world. And it's great if we can link together in whatever way we can. And you know, because basically we were all coming from the same place, you know. And it's really, it's a place where we're not trying to, you know, make money out of something. We're just trying to promote creativity amongst people, and you know, some positivity as well, and be an avenue for some sort of positive change.
Absolutely. All right. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Miriam?
No, I think you summed that up very well. I think what you're doing is amazing. Like having the house, the set, all the archiving is. I'm just very envious of that, because we're trying to pull stuff together for people now. You know, we've reached out for, you know, people to even might have some old posters or tickets from gigs or stuff like that, and just to, you know, even for that, to just try and gather up as much as we can, and it's hard. So you're obviously got that set up really well there.
You know, when you think about nowadays, and like I don't.
Oh, you paused there. Are you back?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're back. Sorry, I think it's just
It's
just the internet connection, I think. But I'm just saying, you know, if you like, what when we were doing stuff, everything was analog. You know, everything was photocopied. So very little of it is digitized. So therefore, it's in people's memories, or it's in people's attics. So I think it's really important that we archive it and make it available for people to see, because, you know, there was some really good stuff going on. And I think it's for future generations to see that.
Yeah, and we have all of these files and folders that people have given us, and what we've been trying to tell people is that trying to get the word out over here is that we're the reason that you've saved all this stuff. The reason that all these folders exist in their houses, these shoe boxes that have all these ticket stubs and have these cassette tapes, all this stuff, because who else is going to do this but us? You know, who else is going to really cherish it? Because even I'm sure that if you brought some of these flyers over to the Dublin History Museum, you know, that they would probably look at it and not really know where to put it, and say like, this is, we don't know what this is, you know, and then move it over to the side. Maybe unless you have the right people working there. But being able to archive these histories is really important for us, and it's amazing for us to see other people doing all of the same stuff, you know, that we're doing, because we're all connected in that same punk community.
It's fantastic.
Well, we really
up the punks.
Up the punks, right? Well, we really appreciate y'all joining us and being out here for us. So any last words?
Oh, it's no problem.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to press end on the recording here.
Thank you.
All right, hold on one second. All right. Bye.
I'm sorry about our internet problems.
It's our country.